Welcome to the second episode of Sew Knits with Confidence. During the first show, I covered the knit sewing basics, taking the less is best approach. Still taking it easy, it's now time to learn how to add personalized touches to your knit sewing projects. You can combine knits with lightweight woven fabrics such as organza around the neckline and hemline for a trendy finish. The sewing is streamlined with the help of paperback fusible web. Press, fuse, and stitch. It's a three-step process. Sew Knits with Confidence. That's what's coming up next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy. Celebrating 30 years of sewing and quilting with Nancy Zieman is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effects threads because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, makers of sewing, knitting, quilting, and embroidery products for over 25 years. Experience the Clover difference. Amazing Designs and Class A Needles.
The beauty of working with knits is that you can add a little touch of accent and it goes a long way. Here you can see the close-up of the organza and the trim that I have on the outer edge, which is a rolled edge stitch on the serger. I mentioned it's a fuse, press, and stitch process. Well, first fusing under the seam allowance around the neckline or hemline is what I'd like to show you. You can use paperback fusible web that's placed into strips or pre-cut into strips, or you can cut it yourself and press it along the edge, fuse it down, and then remove the paper backing and fold it. And I've kind of given it a memory already, so I knew where my seam line was, and I can press this edge. And what's wonderful about paperback fusible web and knits is that it builds in the stretch, so you can see that it's not constricting or the knit from moving, and it keeps the edge just perfect. It's a great edge. Now that organza is cut on the bias, totally biased, so on a 45-degree angle, and I'll show you that strip in a minute. I have my machine set up for a 3-thread rolled edge stitch. You can use whatever stitch you'd like, a little rolled edge or a little overlock. I don't really care. You're the designer here. And this fabric was cut on the bias, on the diagonal, so it has a stretch, a give, and like the shine, you can see the little sheen in it. And then as you're sewing this 2-inch strip, what I like to do is do a test, of course, which I have already done. And I'm trimming off, just if you can see this tail, a little extra fabric coming off, trimming off 1/4 of an inch or so. And do a test run. And as I bring this around to the front, and I'm only doing a little bit of it, you can see that nice edge along the area. Then just simply tuck this trim on underneath the fabric, underneath the pressed edge that I've already done, and then we can do some stitching. So here we have the trimming matching the cut edge, the underneath edge, so it's underlaid. And then set your machine for a straight stitch or a zigzag, and I'm just going to do a straight stitch and sew it down. Just sew it along. So really a fast trim with the help of your serger, if you have that, or paperback fusible web. Now here's another creative option, and that is to add ruffles. This time the organza edges are not finished, giving a shabby chic look. Buy strips with a minimum of gathering, add an accent to your favorite knit top. Here's a close-up of that top. Cut the organza or organdy again at a 45-degree angle. But rather than finishing the edges, we finish them with a pinked edge. I have that right here. The same 2-inch strip works well. You can use any width you'd like. But after cutting it out on the bias, then just trim. Trim the edges so that it kind of curtails some of the gathering, or excuse me, raveling, but it gives that nice look. Run a basting thread along one long edge and then just gather. Now you want a fine edge, fine thread, and then always pull the bobbin thread, because the bobbin thread, for some unknown reason, always gathers better than the top thread. On our small sample, whether it's something you've made or something you've purchased, then just pin the gathering to the top around the neckline and stitch along the edge. It is a fast treatment. You see this in ready to wear, and it changes the look of a t-shirt in short order. Cotton batik or lightweight knits also create some interest, this time with tumbling petals. You can use a stiletto or even a seam ripper, and it will serve as a valuable tool to add texture to your knit project. We looked at ready to wear, and again, this cascading of petals, the accents were so predominant and can be added with a little bit of effort. Now, batiks are the fabric we chose. They're tightly woven. They really don't ravel, so these are all raw edges. You can cut any shape you'd like. We've made little petal shapes, and in the book that accompanies today's program, you'll see that this is the shape that's given. And I mentioned a stiletto because you're going to use this to help gather as you are stitching. Now I'm working on a ready-made shirt, and honestly, I would probably position a couple of these before doing the sewing, so let me do it, since that's what I would propose. And here we'll put it down into place, and then set your machine for a straight stitch, and I'm going to just shorten the stitch a little bit. The choice is yours. And as I place the fabric underneath the under presser foot, lower the presser foot and kind of do a little back stitch to lock the stitches. Then remove the pin. Now here's where your stiletto comes into play. I'm making sure I don't have any fabric underneath. Okay, it's nice and flat. But I'm going to then gather, adding some tucks to the top. Lock back stitch a little bit, and you have one already attached. So you can see you can add a few, you can add a lot, but just by top stitching and gathering on the spot. Could it be that the fabric for your next creation is hanging in your closet? An oversized t-shirt can be transformed into a more attractive knit shirt. Sometimes you can use the existing neckline and only modify the body shape. Other times you can turn a graphic t-shirt into a knit top with an attractive silhouette. Knowing how to sew gives you the tools to be creative. When making this top, I wanted this really specific color. Couldn't find it in fabric, so purchased two shirts. They were short sleeved, and I cut the front and back out of one and the sleeves out of another. I was able to use the hemline from the existing tee, the pre-made tee, for the hemline of both my hem and the sleeve hem. Some of the extra fabric I used for the little accents of the tea roses. I mentioned a graphic shirt you buy them on vacation when you go to special events, and often they have the crew neckline, and I'm not fond for myself of wearing crew necklines. So by purchasing a larger size shirt, I then can convert memories of a vacation or a special event and have it fit my body better, have the neckline that I like to fit me. And I'll show you how to work with this just using a favorite knit pattern and some existing t-shirts. This makes for simple sewing because you'll be able to find some of the elements of the shirt and not have to re-sew them. Here's a large shirt, and it's short sleeve, so if I was making a long sleeve shirt, I'd have to get two t-shirts to get my whole garment out of here. Cut it apart. Cut it down the armholes, or excuse me, side seams, and then the underarm seam of the sleeve, and fold it in half so that you can get the center front. So it's just like laying out fabric, but it already is shaped. And after you get the fabric shaped, I'm not going to use in this pattern the neckline at all. I'm going to remove that and put in a simple neckline like we showed in the first program of this series. So the hem is going to stay. And this pattern had a 1-inch hem, so you just extend the pattern 1 inch from the edge and cut out the front. I think you can see how the back is cut out. Just place the back on the fold, place the pattern on the fold, cut it out. For the sleeves, you're going to do the same thing. Stack the sleeves one on top of each other and cut out the sleeve pattern. Easy for that. Or if you were working with a short sleeve shirt and you purchased 2 t-shirts, well then I think you get the idea. You'd cut the sleeve from the body of the garment. Now in working with a graphic t-shirt, you have to consider where the imprint has been made or the design has been made. So I have another shirt here, and just, you can figure this out quite well, I'm sure, but I'll just show you how this is placed, making certain that the graphic, the screen printing is centered, and this was an easy one to center because it was on point. The quilt block was on point. And look underneath to make certain that you're not cutting into the graphic and that you have enough room, which I seem to do, at the top. So you can just then assemble your shirt from the fabric that you have at hand. A little extra work, but it gives it a little bit more style. Then if you'd like to add a rosette or 2 from the extra fabric, if you're working with a plain shirt, I just cut from the extra fabric 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch strips of fabric. Like before in our last segment, trim the edges with a pinking blade, and then press some gathering tape. The gathering tape we've used a lot recently on Sewing with Nancy. Just kind of fusing it to the wrong side, and then I found recently just baste or stitch the edges together. And then after doing that, pull up the blue threads, the gathering threads, and pull. They'll pull right through the stitching, and then here you are. Just assemble them and then hand tack to the shirt. Some ideas of working with existing tees to make them your own. Next, I'd like to show you how to gain confidence when embroidering on knits. Make it easy on yourself and don't overplan or overstitch. The streamlined steps are made possible by selecting knit-friendly stabilizers. I know that many of you who watch our program don't embroider, and then many of you who embroider but don't sew. So hopefully this program will give both groups confidence in working with knit fabrics, this time particular in adding computerized embroidery. Easy to do, and especially when the design is lightweight. You don't have a lot of density of the stitches. You can see we have this in the neckline. And the shirt I'm going to work with today, we're just going to use this very lightweight, like hibiscus blossom grouping. And I've stitched it, pre-stitched it on another fabric just to see the design and color. And that's what I suggest for beginners to do. You can save this and it can be used as a label on a quilt, or cut it out in part of a greeting card, so it's not going to go to waste. But it's cut out the size of the embroidery hoop. I traced it, cut it out. For those of you who watched our program on machine embroidery, 6 Easy Lessons with expert Eileen Roche, you saw this done, and you can get some more pointers on that online if you'd like to re-watch the show. This is used as a template. And on the shirt, I am going to embroider on this V neckline, and I've placed a mesh, a stabilizer that's a mesh press-on to the back of this so that the back of the shirt does not stick to the hoop itself. So just a little small piece of a fusible mesh stabilizer, a great one to have on your collection. Then pin the template wherever you'd like it, right on your shirt. We're not going to sew over this. Just use it temporarily to get everything positioned. And then place a hoop stabilizer. This is activated by water. It makes it sticky by water, which I'll do in a few minutes. Place it under between the layers and get the hoop positioned. Use a little painter's tape, my favorite thing to use, of holding fabric in a hoop, so that when I lift up the fabric, I can just moisten the stabilizer, and let me get it repositioned so that it's fitting in the hoop so I get it positioned just right. And if it's off by 1/4 of an inch, it's really not going to matter that much for this design. Unpin this. And let me take off the tape. Okay, make it sure it's flat. Then, one more stabilizer. There's usually 3 layers for knits, and I'm using a water-soluble stabilizer. This will come off, or it can be torn off, but I place this on top, and you'll see as I'm embroidering it how this works. Well, set your machine up for embroidery, and here you can see that it's embroidering the design. We're about halfway through the design. The design takes about 8 minutes to stitch in total, and it works very easily with that clear wash-away stabilizer on top, because that stabilizer keeps the embroidery design predominant. You tear it off and then pop this out of the hoop. And you can cut away the excess stabilizer, which I'm not going to do right now, but let me just show you, even though it's got this stabilizer in there, that where the embroidery would be placed. Remove it and you would have an easy embroidery on your shirt. The cascading flounces created for this tee are raw-edged and easy to achieve. Use your favorite knit top pattern and make a few modifications to the pattern to create a top with charming details. When you look at this top, you think, can I really do this? Well, yes, you can, with just some changes. The seams are added down the front, cascades are included, which are really quite magical, and I'll show you how that works. You'll need to change the front pattern piece. Out of a piece of tissue paper, cut a whole front. So usually they're cut in the fold, make it one whole front of a tissue piece, and fold the tissue back in half. Fold it once, fold it twice along the hem, and fold it a 3rd time, increase. Then mark the lower edge, and I have done this on this pattern that's been unfolded, just marking 5 of the creases. This will work for any size, so not just a medium or an extra large, any size. And at the top neckline, make 5 marks from the center out, 1 inch apart, so you have 5 marks. You can connect the dots using a long ruler. Connect the marks from the lower edge to the marks at the neckline, and here's your pattern piece. You're going to cut these apart. Notice I've added grain lines to each of the pattern, and as we move over, you'll see that on the pattern pieces I have added 1/4 of an inch seam allowances on each side. This takes a little time. It takes a little time to cut it apart, but that's exactly how pattern designers, fashion designers, make the pattern changes from a basic pattern. Now for that flounce. You may be surprised at how this is shaped, and someone on my staff helped me figure this out because I didn't get it at first, and that is cutting an 8.5 inch circle for each flounce. In the instructions we tell you how to draw a big 6, about 2.5 inches from the edges, and then along that 6 line you're going to cut, and this creates the flounce. How about that for a very unique treatment? Now the shirt itself, I'm going to pull that up along the side so you can kind of see what's happening as I work along, is that the flounces start about 1 inch from the top, half an inch because now there's a seam, but would start from 1 inch at the top, and I cut the edge flush and then would just pin it down all the way down to the edge, and then cut off the excess flounce 1 inch from the bottom so you have room for your hem. After you've basted that down, this is what it looks like. And you're going to make 5 circles, pin it to the 1 of each pieces. And here this is flouncing already. It just hold it over, and there you can see how that cascades down. When you meet your seam allowances together, you can re-stitch section 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 and 3 to 4. There are all these different pattern pieces, actually 6 pattern pieces. And there you have that unique insert, a great graduate study class for Sew Knits with Confidence. Project Linus is not new to Sewing with Nancy viewers. Many of you have donated blankets to this national organization that has provided nearly 5 million blankets to children who are in crisis. They've now added a new venture encouraging volunteers to stitch weighted blankets, which helps create a calming effect for children with sensory disorders. I'd like you to welcome Mary Belongia, who is from the national headquarters of Project Linus. Mary, welcome to Sewing with Nancy.
Well, thank you for having me.
Mary Belongia.
Belongia.
Excuse me for mispronouncing
okay.
your name. The most important thing we have to talk about is this weighted blanket. And what a wonderful process. And tell me about the blanket.
Well, this is an example of a weighted blanket, which is used, it's very heavy.
Very heavy.
Which is used for children for some reason who have a problem processing their stimulation from outside influences, whether it be sight or sound or lights or smells or whatever. For some reason, they have a problem being able to sort that out and calm themselves down. For some reason, unbeknownst to science, I'm sure there's something behind it now that's been discovered, but children have been found to take blankets and place them on top of themselves one after another, or even putting a hand or a leg in between the mattress and the box spring to try and get some deep pressure. And that deep pressure produces a calming effect.
And this blanket, which you have the instructions on your website, is designed, it's very unique and it's heavy. And it's made in channels, as you can see. And you found, you've told me recently that you don't send them weighted.
We don't. We just send the outside shell. Actually, it's weighted with sheets, with bed sheets. Twin size sheets is what we've used here. But it's really important to remember that every child is different, every child is a different size. So it has to be tailored to that particular child.
And you tailor them with the use of twin sheets.
The top sheet is very simple to fold.
When you told me about this on the phone, I thought, oh, you're going to cut these into sections and roll them, but you fold and fold and fold.
Just fold in half and fold in half and just keep doing it, and eventually we get this size.
And if you're wondering how this is going to work, there's hook and loop tape on 2 ends. It's hard.
It's hard, but that's a good thing because we don't want it to come open easily. It sometimes helps to kind of roll it a little bit, just to facilitate getting it in the channel. And then when it's in there, you can put your arm in and just
fluff it out.
Open it up. Yeah, it's very easy to do that. But as you can see, it takes up the whole channel. It's kind of hard here because we're not in a we're not flat on a table. But once it goes in, we just Velcro.
A hook and loop tape, Velcro, any other type of
we put it
closure.
Make sure that it's closed so that it can easily be removed for washing, whatever.
I can see the weight, and little babies are swaddled. This gives kind of the same type of thoughts. And
it does.
To make these outer blankets, you don't want them too powerful in color.
Exactly.
Or design.
We need to be careful, especially on the back side. We don't want them to be too stimulating in color. So what we do is, this one is a solid. This is a tone on tone. The front side, many children, this little boy, the one that this particular blanket is going to, is a soccer fan. So this is why it was made with soccer fabric. And we try and do as best as we can when they give us when we hear about a need. Maybe somebody will say, this is for a little girl, she likes princesses, or she's a fan of Winnie the Pooh, and we do our best. We can't always accommodate, but sometimes it's nice to personalize them a little bit and give that child their very own blanket. But the requests are pretty daunting, which is unfortunate. There's autism and cerebral palsy and ADHD and ADD, different disorders that produce this sensory problem, is really where the weighted blanket seems to be most beneficial. And we've just had such a tremendous outpouring of help, but the need is never met, as with everything, unfortunately.
But as people who sew and stitch and work with fabric, we can help in this manner by making the outer cover for a weighted blanket and donating them to the local chapter of Project Linus, a nonprofit organization.
And we have many people. We offer the pattern on the website. There are people that just need to make for family, make for friends, and we're happy to give that pattern out so that can happen. We have actually two different patterns. One is made with a solid fabric by our coordinator in Joplin, Missouri. She originally came up with it, Joyce Gensler. And then our national assistant, Cheryl Hughes, came up with this pattern. Just two different ideas depending on your expertise.
Well, Mary, thank you for sharing this with us. What a wonderful project and fitting a need, and thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for being with us on Sewing with Nancy for our two-part series on Sew Knits with Confidence. I hope you've enjoyed this and regain confidence if you've sewn with knits before, or that you'll be able to try it if you haven't. Go to nancyzieman.com for more information on our Nancy's Corner guest, our more streaming video programs, Facebook, and social media. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
Nancy has written a full-color, fully illustrated book entitled Sew Knits with Confidence that includes all the information featured in this series. It's $14.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the book, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2624. Order item number W8767. Sew Knits with Confidence. Credit card orders only. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at nancyzieman.com to see additional episodes, Nancy's blog, and more. Sewing with Nancy, celebrating 30 years of sewing and quilting with Nancy Zieman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs and Class A Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Olyssa. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zieman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.